Welcome to Invisible, Breaking Through the Stigma of Addiction. I'm Dean Anderson, your host, and this is the show where we talk about all things addiction and substance use related, how it impacts the community and the people in it. Super grateful today to have on the show Pete Mogan. Pete is a trainer, coach, health and fitness advocate, and I love watching him on social media sharing all his wisdom and knowledge and the things that he has. And so I've asked him to be on the show to share some more about his passion and the things that he does in the community. Thanks for being here, Pete.
Thanks so much for inviting me, Dean. I'm pretty pumped to be here.
You're literally pumped, both pumped and pumped. It's fantastic to have you on the show, Pete. I'm gonna ask you right out of the gates, jump right into it. What's the correlation of physical fitness and mental health and addiction, and just hit me with it?
Well, I'm glad you gave that double meaning to the word pumped, both physically and psychologically, because to me, exercise plays a massive physical and psychological role. And it's so beneficial to just about everybody. I mean, granted, I'm biased, but yes, I think there's a lot of huge benefits to being physically active. When it comes to talking about physical activity, one of the things I really want to be sure of or be clear about the gate is the way that you're approaching it. And a lot of people approach physical fitness or activity with what we call a finite mindset. Finite mindset is the way we look at a game. There's a start, there's an end. And the example I use is the Super Bowl champions of 2022 will forever be the Super Bowl champions of 2022. That's never going to change. When it comes to health and fitness, there's no level of fitness or level of health you can get to where you're like, I'm healthy, I'm fit. Now what do I do? It becomes an ongoing thing. And so the important thing to recognize is health and fitness is what I like to call an infinite game. The goal isn't to win, there's no way to win. The goal is to simply play as long as possible. And that's going to influence your decisions in terms of how you approach and the things that you do, because you're not trying to reach a certain level, you're trying to stay as active and stay involved with fitness for the rest of your life, for as long as you possibly can play the game. And so when it comes down to controlling your brain and your body, one of the big benefits I found with physical fitness is it's really trying to get the computer, the brain, to better control the machine. And it gives us good conscious control over our body. And so that has a bunch of really beneficial effects, what I found, both psychological and physical. When people begin to exercise, there's really two important things that happen to their body in terms of the way they change. Is most people go into a gym or begin exercise seeking some kind of change in physiology. Less fat, more muscle, maybe more bone mass. The thing that people need to appreciate is physiology responds to intensity. The more intense you exercise, the faster your physiology is going to change. Where the issue becomes is your capacity for intensity is controlled by your ability to recover. And recovery is controlled by our sleep, our stress, our nutrition, and then the one we really can't modify is our biology. It becomes harder and harder every year to recover. And so what happens when we...
You're telling me.
Yeah, when we first start exercising, we remember what we could do. We're seeking the physiology that we used to have, and quickly, we massively or quickly outtrain our capacity for recovery. That leads to injury, that leads to being sore. Worst case scenario, we get injured, we get hurt, we get frustrated, and we're like, why am I doing all this? The other important way, though your body changes, your brain changes in two important ways, is one, it gets better at recruiting your muscles. So it's now paying attention. Look at the range of motion that your hips, knees, and ankles go through in a squat versus your everyday use. It's much greater when you're exercising. And so if you haven't done that before, the first time you do that, your brain's like, oh, what's this?
And then, is that what it says?
That's
I
one of
think
the
there's
things.
different expletives that my brain says. I think it says something different. But
and that's one of the things. But then the next day when you go to do that again, your brain's like, oh yeah, I remember this. And so now it's better at recruiting the muscles needed to perform that exercise. And so in some capacity, you get stronger. And that's a change of neurology, not physiology.
Nice.
The other thing that happens is you become more coordinated. And we understand this with kids in sports. If I use the example of basketball, you don't throw a kid onto a basketball court and say, go play. First you teach them how to dribble, then how to dribble with both hands, and then they become more efficient. And as they become more efficient, they become better at it. And when you exercise, you're paying attention to how your body moves. And so you become more efficient in movement. And that allows you to either accomplish the same task with less effort, leaving more capacity for other things. Or with the same level of effort, now you can do more things and you feel accomplished. And again, that's an adaptation of neurology, your brain. And your brain adapts to frequency, which is the exact opposite of intensity. And so with exercise, one of the most important things, at least I found, is to bias frequency of movement versus making super heavy weights or doing it super fast, because we want to prioritize the computer, the brain, controlling the machine. The machine's always going to follow and always do what the computer tells it. And the machine is much better than people realize. All we got to do is help it control a little bit better, give it better instructions. And if we talk about from a psychological perspective, when we focus that way, one, we're not getting too sore, we're not getting beat up, we don't hurt as much, and we can see meaningful benefit or meaningful change in as little as a couple of weeks, just through efficiency. And now we begin to get buy-in as a human being. Oh, this thing I'm doing, it's having an effect on my body. I'm a little bit more in control of this massive thing that's been out of control for a long time. And that's one of the big ways I found, or at least discovered, that exercise seems to help a lot of people who are struggling with all kinds of things. One of the things you talked about was addiction, and the last thing I want to do is suggest I have experience or I'm an addiction counselor. I'm not. But to me, it seems like from my minimal experience, addiction is some loss of control, some degree of lack of control. And one of the benefits that I see with exercise is it begins to return some sense of control, which I think can be very powerful and very helpful. I mean, that's in addition to all the biochemistry that happens in terms of endorphins and all the wonderful things that happens in your body with exercise, lowering inflammation and all that stuff. But I mean, just the concept of, hey, this thing I'm doing in my body, it's making a difference in the way my body works. And that can happen in weeks, really quick.
That's fantastic. So I'm hearing it's a process, not an event, which is something that we say in the recovery world. It's just something that I'm just going to keep doing. It's about living. It's not about getting there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I love that term. It's a process, not an event. One of the things that I say is a lot of life we spend what we call task focused, right? That's what sports is. When you're playing a game in sports, we don't care how the ball goes in the net. As long as you stay within rules, get the ball in the net, right? That's task focus. In practice, we're process focused. And anybody who's played any level of sports, I'm sure can appreciate, you spend 80 to 90% of your time involved with that sport practicing, and you spend about 10% involved in the task, right? And so what's practice? Practice is we want you to step like this, we want you to hold here, we want this person over here. We're paying attention to how we move, or how we position ourselves. And in the game, that's already ingrained, and so we do it automatically, and now because we're dealing with the opponents and dealing with all the dynamics of the game. Life is very similar. We spend most of our life task focused. Move my body here to there, pick this up, put this up here. One of the big benefits with exercise is now you're process focused. You're paying attention to how you hinge, how you push. A great example is picking up that case of water at Costco. If you spent time learning how to properly hinge, brace your core, use your legs to lift, when you go to pick up that case of water, even though you're talking to your spouse, talking to your kids, telling the kid to get back in the cart, you do it properly versus bending over, and that's how people hurt their back, right? It's such a little insidious thing, but when as a human being do you ever spend time practicing movement? You don't.
No.
We're very task focused, but we know life is huge. It comes at us fast sometimes. In the winter, things slip. Guess what? It slips. And if you have those mechanics down and practiced, chances of you holding your body tight, moving while moving secure, are far greater, and your risk for injury goes way down.
So the physiology of it all, I mean, I'm hearing that there's a slow process, that repetition is key, and we can, and it's possible for anyone, right? So here's the thing: is I recognize when I look at social media and I see people like yourself, or I see people that are fitness advocates, are normally at this extreme level or this higher level of fitness than everybody else. And when we're looking at recovery or mental health, or people trying to integrate into this, there's a much softer, gentler way to do that. Do you have any tips or suggestions on how to make it a softer, gentler? I hear everything that you're saying is exactly that, but it's also, there's a softer way to make it so that me personally, when I think about going, I'm like, oh, this is going to hurt, this is going to suck, and then it's like, I'm going to eat a Twinkie instead, that sort of thing. So what's the softer, gentler way for people that are struggling with mental health and addiction and coping?
So the way I recommend everybody to get started, okay, is bias consistency first, okay? Not frequency, not intensity, not specificity, it's consistency, okay? I can do more with somebody who comes to see me once a month for a year than I can with somebody who comes 5 days a week for 3 months and then I never see them again. Okay? When you're deciding, should I do this exercise? Should I follow this diet program? Should I follow this health intervention? Ask yourself, can you see yourself doing it for the rest of your life? If the answer is yes, okay, that's probably something worth exploring. But if you're talking about, oh, I want to get healthy, so I'm going to eliminate wine and I'm going to start doing morning cardio and I'm going to start doing all this stuff and eating all this stuff I've never done before and I'm going to do it for 12 weeks. Well, guess what? Now we have a finite mindset. And that's great. You'll probably feel great in 12 weeks, but you're going to be tired, you're going to be beat up, and then 16, 20, 32 weeks later, you're back where we started because it wasn't sustainable. So consistency can be very small. And one thing I've done with some people is I say, look, I want you to sit for 5 minutes quietly. Set a timer on your phone and just sit 5 minutes quietly. Don't look at your phone. Don't look at social media. And can you find 5 minutes consistently? Maybe it's 3 days a week, maybe it's 2 days a week. Once you do that, then we begin to build from there. But if we can't get step one, there's no point in talking about this great exercise or this great routine program or fat loss this or supplement that. It's got to be consistency. I once had the great privilege of talking to a gentleman who lost 100 pounds over the course of a year. And the way he did it was he would go to the gym every day. He would walk into the gym, do one set of an exercise and walk out. Time from the time he left the house to the time he got home from his house was maybe 20 minutes. For 6 weeks he did that. And then he would do 4 or 5 sets. And then a couple weeks later, now he would do 2 exercises. But what was key is he built the habit of going to the gym. That's step one. And until that habit's there's no point in talking about anything else. Once the habit's there, okay, now we can build and we can add on the habit. And if it's 5 minutes, maybe it becomes 10 minutes. Maybe it goes from 5 minutes once a week to 5 minutes 3 times a week. And then it's 10 minutes once a week and 5 minutes twice a week. Remember what we talked at the beginning. The goal is to play as long as possible. So there's no pressure to get it done now. Focus on the consistency first and then build from there.
Right. So the whole finite idea is I recognize that everybody wants to get somewhere, and I hear you saying that over and over again. And one of my favorite quotes is, comparison is the thief of joy. Right? So that idea of saying that I'm constantly comparing and I need to be at this space, to take that off our plate. And the most important part, and the hardest part is just getting there.
Is getting there. It's deciding to do it.
It's just getting up and getting there. Once you're there, it doesn't matter if you do 1 set or 5 set or 10 set, but it's getting there. And once we get through that psychological piece of the hurdle of doing it, then I can start to envision it. I can start to picture it. I can see myself as somebody who goes to the gym. I can see myself as somebody who exercises, and I'd be able to make that lifestyle change.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
And it becomes a very important way in how you see yourself. A lot of people are driven, as I said at the beginning, when they go to get exercise by a change in physiology. Most often, it's weight loss.
Yeah.
And exercise is a really bad way to lose weight.
I agree. So we have to bring it to an end here. There's so much great information. We could sit here and talk about this stuff all day. I'm fascinated by it. I could lose a couple of pounds myself or do all those things, but we're not going to focus on that, right, Pete? So thank you very much for being on the show. I really appreciate all your wisdom and all the great things you have to share and all your passion that you have for this. And I thank you very much for being on the show.
Well, I appreciate you inviting me, and I'm glad I had the chance to come in today.
Awesome. Thanks, Pete. And we'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to Invisible. I'm super grateful to have on today's show April Hutchinson. She is a Team Canada gold medalist and a power lifter. Welcome to the show, April.
Thank you, Dean. Thanks for having me.
It's fantastic to have you here. Now, the reason why you're on the show is because you have a very unique journey, and you've shared this out loud, and you've been very forward with your journey and what's happening with your sports and your personal life. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Sure. So I'm actually a grateful recovering alcoholic. I have about 3 years sober now. So I got sober September 21st of 2019, which was right before COVID hit. I entered rehab And when I came out, I thought, well, I have to do something to keep active, to keep fit. So I just stumbled into powerlifting. Within a short amount of time, about 6 months, my coach told me that I would qualify for the provincials, and then I qualified for the nationals. But at that time, during COVID, all the competitions were canceled. So I literally just spent about 2 years training in my friend's garage, hoping that there would be a competition. Working on, obviously, my sobriety, attending AA meetings, doing what I could to keep healthy mentally and physically, especially during COVID, which was just a horrible, horrible time. So then within 2 years, I went to nationals and I won gold medal. I'm currently ranked the #1 powerlifter in Canada for my age range. And most recently, I had a place on Team Canada, in which I will be going to Worlds in October.
Wow, congratulations. That's
Thanks.
fantastic.
Thank you.
So how does the physicality of it all play into the recovery part, like the actual physical powerlifting? How does that play into your addiction recovery?
Well, I like to look at my life as kind of almost like a pie. So, and there's all these different slices of my pie. So I have like my work, my sleep, my eating, nutrition. I have my mental health, which goes along with my spirituality, of course. And then I have my physical. So, I mean, if any of those slices of my pie are off balance, it can really affect my recovery. So, as we know, a lot of people use physical activity as an outlet. So, you know, towards the end of my day, or sometimes I work out in the morning, if I'm feeling, you know, maybe it could be sadness or anger or any type of emotion, it's really good for me to work out. I realize those feelings and I sit with them, but I also know that I have to get rid of those feelings somehow and in a healthy way instead of drinking. So that's why I work out 5 times a week. Even on my off days of powerlifting, I'll still do something physical, like play tennis or go rollerblading, just to get out of my head, right? Because we spend so much time in our heads, right? So it really helps as a release, really, for me.
I love that you say that, you know, I still have to sit with them. I still got to recognize them, because that's usually the bigger problem is that people use it as sublimation, or they supplement one thing for another. So they go, I feel this way, so I'm going to do this and this will make me feel better. And the reality of it is it does help us feel better in the physical sense of, but I still have to learn how to sit with those feelings, right?
It's true. And actually a friend of mine said that people in sobriety or recovering alcoholics or addicts are some of the most emotionally intelligent people he has ever met. And I thought about that and I was like, it's true, because I never did that. I always masked my feelings with alcohol. So now if I'm stressed out, like even before a competition, I'll get nervous and stressed out, but I can recognize it right away, and I know to take some deep breaths. Or it's great. It's a great feeling to sit with the feelings, whether they're negative or positive, right? And it makes you mindful. And trust me, I'm every day learning ways to be more mindful, because it helps me in everything that I do. So,
right.
Yeah.
So it's got to help with competition, and it helps with everyday life and all those things. So you can see how those carry over, because I mean, there's got to be a big mind game in powerlifting. It's not just physical. I mean, you've got to overcome all of these other obstacles.
It's 90% mental. All sports are 90% mental. So it really could determine if you get a gold medal or not a place on the podium, depending on your mental state. Yeah.
Right. So I got a pretty good mental game. That means I can start powerlifting.
Probably.
Then, right? I don't know about that.
Go for it.
I don't know about that. So I mean, this is a wonderful conversation. I love this. One of the best things I've ever heard is, you know, people with substance use disorders are emotional people that don't like emotions. So there's this constant emotional struggle and battle that's going on inside. So what you're recognizing is that as I learn to be healthy, I have to have emotional intelligence in order to get through that. And that emotional intelligence is built in time. So therefore, the people who are in recovery don't have a choice but to learn emotional intelligence, right? Yeah. So that plays a big role. Yeah. Fantastic. What do you have going on in the future? Tell me about some of your future aspirations and...
Well, so right now I just came back from the North American Championships, which were in Panama City. So I got gold medal there, and I literally flew.
You have the gold medal.
I do.
You have you want to share your bling?
Sure.
Awesome.
Yeah. So there we
Love
go.
it. Love it. Sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Okay. So I came back and I literally have to start training for Worlds, because Worlds are in St. John's in October 12th. So
Newfoundland.
yes.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so I basically have 5 weeks to pick it back up again and train my little butt off.
And what does that consist of, and how does that interact with your recovery? How do those two worlds go together when you're in deep training, and is there a balance there?
Yeah, like I said, there always has to be a balance. Every day I wake up and I kind of self-analyze myself. How am I feeling? I could wake up in a bad mood, and I'm like, why am I in a bad mood? I have to kind of determine how I feel in the morning, but I do know every day I have to train. But I still go to AA meetings. Like during my week, I work all day. I work Monday to Friday. I train after work, usually from 5 to 6, and then I'll hit up an AA meeting at night. I'm very good at keeping in touch with my friends in recovery. I find that's the key too, is to always kind of check in with someone as well, like another recovering alcoholic, right? Because keep in mind, all this stuff, winning medals, it can go to your head, and the main important thing for me is to always remain humble.
Yeah.
So, because you start getting an ego, you're gonna get back drinking again. So.
Yeah, no, I totally recognize that. So the AA and the people that you connect with allow you to have some sort of humility and to keep you in check
for sure.
and make sure that you don't get lost into a different realm of being.
Exactly. Yes.
Wonderful. And I recognize that you're talking about routine and the day-to-day structure. What role does that play?
Well, that's huge for me, and that's something I learned when I was in Westover, the rehab I went to. Waking up every morning, and like the smallest thing, like making your bed, you can take such pride in that. Just like every morning, make your bed, you have a good breakfast. So you're doing good things for your mental health and physical at the same time. But structure, probably is one of the things that saved my life, because without it, I had pure chaos.
Right.
So no, just like the discipline, and that plays a role into my powerlifting, right? So there's some days where I'm so tired from work, and I notice it might be a harder workout that day. I could easily skip it, but the discipline that I've had and that I received at Westover has helped me in my sports as well, because consistency, discipline, structure, it goes hand in hand with my day-to-day life, and also with my sport.
Right. So recovery being incremental and something that we do a little bit every day to get somewhere. It's like that said, it's a process, not an event. We don't get there. It's something that you work on every day.
Exactly.
So self-discipline is really the cornerstone of that, staying in that thing. Are there anything specifically that you do to maintain that self-discipline, or that you do to focus on yourself and make sure you stay that way?
I actually listen to a lot of motivational speeches.
Awesome.
I'm probably the only powerlifter that puts my headphones on and listens to different programs, like motivational sports, whether it's from an athlete or just, it could be a TED Talks or Tony Robbins.
Nice.
But I love it. And sometimes I'll actually even listen to AA meetings, because there's wonderful podcasts on Spotify with recovery groups. Music pumps me up, but mostly it's probably books that I read and speeches. So
sounds very grounding.
Yes.
Fantastic. So going forward, you've got a bunch of really great things on your plate coming up, and hopefully that we can look forward to seeing you get another medal in St. John's.
Yes, hopefully.
Right. So lastly, you talked about earlier, while we were sitting here earlier, about how important it is for you to be vocal about your recovery and the fact that you are someone in recovery, and how big of a deal it is. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, it's funny, just talking about it kind of makes me tear up, because for a long time I was ashamed of obviously my drinking problem, and I was hiding it and just calling myself an alcoholic. And as we know, it's better now, but there was such a huge stigma with people with addictions. I think that's why I kept it a secret. But this last time I went into rehab, because I had gone to rehab a couple times before, but I was never open about my disease. So this time around, I just kind of did many podcasts, I did interviews. I remember the first time I came out and told everyone publicly, it was actually on a show here with Vanessa, and I started crying, because I was just so relieved that I had told everyone that I was an alcoholic. And it's really true. I love the expression. and it's your secrets will keep you sick. And that was totally true in my case. So it's funny now that I've told it basically the world. I've had so many people reach out to me. I've had people across Canada write me on Instagram and say, can you help me? Like, I think I have a drinking problem. So the best part, I think, is just helping people. Like, that's the reward that I get. It's not the medals, it's actually helping other people. So
Right, and being able to take our discomfort and our pain and the things that happened in our past and use it as a powerful tool to propel us forward and to get us into a right space. So that recovering out loud is super powerful, and it's the cornerstone of changing a lot of lives. And really, even that the 12-step process, it's not about being out loud as much vocal in a public sense, but it's also saying, I'm going to take the information that I have and pass it down to the next person, and I'm going to share my recovery, right? And each time that we do that, we're taking away some of that stigma, like you said, and also the shame that goes along with it, right? Yeah. So the shame is probably the biggest, hardest thing to overcome, if I don't say so myself.
No, it's true.
Right? So, and I love Brene Brown talks about shame, and she's an expert in shame for those that don't know. But she says that the sick is our secrets part, the secrets that we keep, inherently, if I'm keeping a secret, it's likely that the reason why I'm keeping a secret is because I'm ashamed of people knowing about it. So most of the time it's shame-based. So when I let go of those secrets and I take care of those, I get rid of the shame, and then I feel free. I no longer have to hide behind who I am. That's really powerful stuff. And you're the living example of what that looks like, and to be able to go out there and win gold medals and participate and be open about your recovery in the process and find all that balance. So that's fantastic. Thank you very much for being on the show today, April. I really appreciate it, and it's so great to see you again.
Yeah, nice to see you too. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. We'll be right back after this break. Balance is one of the most important parts of dealing with addiction and mental health. And today we got to look at one piece of the pie, which is physical fitness and activity. And we had a couple of experts and a gold medalist on today to share some of their passions and information. And one of the big takeaways from this entire thing was it's just about getting started. And it's no different than dealing with addiction. It's just get started. Just get going. Do it. It's a process, not an event. And like I say at the end of every show, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. And the second best time is right now.